There's like three parts to this question actually that I wanted to ask you because it's a really hot topic at the moment. We've been talking about this for the last month or so, every week without failure, I think it is. So pretty much the last few months, you yourself, and there's obviously many other people who are doing the same thing, but a lot of people who are strong with the economy are warning about a cold winter that's happening and coming into Europe. There's been large reports coming out that the Northern Hemisphere winter is now starting to actually bite, and that's actually starting to happen. So there's three parts that I actually wanted to ask you, and I'm going to go through them one by one. So I'm going to ask you one question first and then go through it one by one just so we can get some structure to this. But the first one is, with the cold winter happening in Europe, Russia has now plunged to minus 61 degrees Celsius. So I myself don't really know much about Russia, but I'm assuming that's pretty cold, right?
That's very cold. Minus 61 will kill you, right? That's kill you territory. So we're talking, it was northern Russia, mid-Siberia, but it hit minus 61, which was, everyone was stunned. They had to go and check the equipment 3 or 4 times to make sure it was spot on, and that it hit minus 61. Now, the actual, that system made its way right the way through into China, but it also, on the other side, made its way into Canada and into Minnesota, like into the northern part of the US as well. And I was talking to guys in the US, in St. Paul, Minneapolis, St. Paul, who were saying that they've seen temperatures that they don't see until February. Right, so February is normally the coldest part of the winter in the US. They're seeing February-style temperatures now in the US, and same in Russia. The Russians are just preparing for something that they haven't seen in a long, long time. So,
yeah, it's scary when you look at that. Minus 61 degrees Celsius. Like, you don't have to be a weather expert to say that's just going ridiculous. So
I thought at first it was a mistake and it was actually Fahrenheit, and then I realized, well, Russians don't use Fahrenheit, they use Celsius. So
just ridiculous. So the next part of this that we're seeing come out, and yeah, Fiona, so much for global warming, I know, right? So the next point that we've got here is now on the UK, the United Kingdom. So there has been serious warnings come out about the serious winter temperatures that are now coming. So firstly, with that, what warnings have you seen come out so far in the UK?
Yeah, so I got, so my cousins and family that are in the UK, I was talking to them. Once again, every time I talk to them, I keep telling them, get out, go to Spain. And one of my cousins sent me a message saying the UK Weather Service has just announced that temperatures in Northern England and Scotland are going to be some of the worst that have ever come across, right? Like they've ever seen. And she was actually saying that, I was right, which, I wanted in writing, triplicate, stamped, certified, because you don't hear that from my family, especially the ones that are living in the UK. So that was from on the ground. And then I started to hunt and see what else is out there. London is got warnings on it for snow, for severe snowfall at the moment, and plummeting temperatures. London. That doesn't happen for a long time. Like, it just doesn't happen. And London's normally wet, dreary. Snow doesn't stay on the ground very long because it's a metropolis. Snow's staying on the ground and it's early in London and that. So what they're also saying is elderly people to take care, and that a lot of the emergency services may not be available during severe cold snaps. Right. So these are warnings that are going out to the people in the UK. So everything that we've been saying about this is going to be a very, very cold, bitter winter in the Northern Hemisphere is starting to show. And off the back of that, with people not being able to warm their homes, expect to see some of the largest death tolls from winter that we've seen in a long time.
Well, yeah, it is scary what's happening over there. And then if that comes over to Australia, it will give us good, like, we've got time to prepare. That's the thing. So it's a matter of staying on top of it where we are in Australia, not just looking over the world and seeing what's happening there and ignoring it. We've got to actually prepare ourselves. Otherwise, the same thing will happen to us in no time. But
and at least here in Australia, really, you're not going to freeze to death, right? We don't have those temperatures. Once again, Australia is the lucky country because we're pretty much warm even in winter. Like, I know I whinge and bitch about anything below 25, but you know, seriously, we don't see minus temperatures for the long periods of time that the Northern Hemisphere does. And you know, we're very, very lucky. Once again, lucky sperm club for us that are born here and actually moved here. That's really what you can bring it down to. Good foresight and, you know, and good location. Roll of the dice.
yeah, definitely. And the other point to that question I was going to ask you surrounding the UK was that I want to read a quote from Oliver Dowden, who's a UK politician, about himself and his business secretary Grant Shapps. So he actually said, he made a quote saying that he and I, so he's referring to his business secretary and himself, both of them have strong confidence about the resilience of the UK power networks, and accepting a very exceptional circumstance, we are confident that we will continue supply throughout the winter. So are these UK politicians just talking out of their ass to maintain a good public image, or do you think they're actually speaking truth?
100%. The UK power network's not resilient and reliable. They've been spending a lot of money on coal, buying it out of Eastern Europe, and they've been stockpiling it, getting some of they reopened 2 or 3 coal-powered coal-fired power stations recently, because they knew that they were going to have a mass shortage. The continent can't supply power to them anymore, because, as we've seen, Switzerland doesn't even have enough. So if Switzerland doesn't have enough power, they can't export it across to the UK, and vice versa. Europe will actually be looking at the UK to supply them with power. So no, their network is simply put, fucked.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised with that. So the last point to this question now, before we move on to questions from everyone else in the audience and from the ones that came through during the week, is one that I find really interesting, and I haven't actually been able to find much online for myself with this, but basically we've seen I think it's Uzbekistan, that's how you pronounce it. Sheep herders there. Yeah, Uzbekistan, sheep herders over there were found dead from freezing. You've been mentioning over the last few weeks that people were actually going to die from the coldness. And we're now seeing that with sheep herders over there. So where have you actually been seeing the information around this? And can you share more about what you're finding here?
So one of my business partners is a sheep farmer. So he's an Australian with business interests in sheep in Uzbekistan, right? So he sends Australian sheep to Uzbekistan to create herds. He said to me that they, in the local press, that they found 4 sheep herders dead in the field from an overnight drop in temperature, cold snap. It killed a heap of sheep and that as well, because he was saying that his business is going to do well by having to sell more sheep to Uzbekistan, and he's also breeding in Uzbekistan now as well, because of the cold that's killing sheep and then the sheep herders. I found it on an obscure, because I went hunting, so I read like Turkish news and papers of that effect, and I found it in a Turkish newspaper as well, that they'd actually said that there was these people dying And you remember these guys are nomads. They live in sheepskin huts, but it normally doesn't get that cold that you're going to die. So yeah, we are starting to see everything that we sort of warned about, that you know, people are now going to start dying, and it's terrible. You know, the warnings were there, but you know, people just aren't taking it up.
Yeah, no, it's actually sobering, but also like terrifying when you actually see stuff that's been spoken about for months actually coming into reality. Because it's one thing leading up to the whole situation, when you're talking about it, you feel like an urgency, but at the same time, it's not really, kind of doesn't feel realistic in a sense. But when you actually see it happening, it's a much different feeling.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's now real. It is now really real.